This is the most disturbing topic I've ever covered on this channel. As I'm covering 3 of the most terrifying cults to have ever existed, I will be detailing the tragic and true deaths of dozens of people, many of which were helpless children. It's hard to believe a select few people who now we can clearly see as the murderers they were could amass such a following in their lifetime. I want to make this clear. This video is not meant to glamorize their violent actions, but instead to paint their warped perception in a factual light. These are life's real monsters, and they are human. Number 3. Los Narcos Satanicos. This cult was ran by Adolfo Costanzo. To understand how this cult began, we have to go back to Costanzo's childhood. Growing up in a chaotic household, his father and his first stepfather died while he was young. His mother then began to believe Costanzo had psychic abilities, and the two traveled to Haiti to learn voodoo. His mother soon married again, this time to a man who practiced Palo Mayombe, a religion that believes in the power of nature and animal sacrifices. Believing he possessed special abilities, he began apprenticing under a man that claimed to be a sorcerer and converted to the religion. His belief and involvement in religious rituals grew, and when he moved to Mexico City, he started a business based on the claims he could cast spells of fortune for those willing to pay the price. His grotesque rituals called for bigger and bigger animals to kill for their blood and bones to meet the demand of the requests. Word spread of his business and alleged magic, and soon his clientele consisted of drug cartels, contract killers, and corrupt high-power officials. Feeling he needed more than what animals could offer to please the wishes of his seedy clients, he moved to grave robbing for human remains. His delusions grew as did his success, and when he felt his spells were the reason for the success of the Calzados, he asked to become a business partner in their cartel. When they rejected his request, it is believed he is responsible for 7 of the members' deaths when their mutilated bodies were found, each missing parts of their bodies, such as fingers and brains. He soon partnered up with a different cartel, and in the late 80s, moved to a property in the isolated desert called Rancho Santa Elena. It is there that Costanzo and his group of followers performed brutal ritualistic murders. With his connections, he was able to evade capture as his victim count climbed. But in March of 1989, the cult abducted a pre-med college student by the name of Mark Kilroy outside a bar. Kilroy was on spring break and from the US. It's believed he was murdered just a few hours after being taken to the ranch after he tried to escape. His disappearance sparked an intense investigation and pressure from the US to find his whereabouts. Soon, the trail led back to Costanzo and his cult. Police stormed the ranch, but Costanzo had already fled the scene. They discovered 15 mutilated bodies buried throughout the property. Costanzo fled Mexico City and hid out in an apartment building with 4 other cult members. The cult finally came crumbling down when the police investigation resulted in several members being arrested and Costanzo being killed after asking a cult member to shoot him before police arrived. During his short reign of terror, the cult is believed to have claimed the lives of over 25 people. Number 2. Order of the Solar Temple. The Order of the Solar Temple is a cult based on the ideas of the Knights Templar and founded by Joseph de Mambro and Luc Duret in Geneva in the 1980s. Some of the key ideological points of the cult was the need for a restructuring of power and authority within the world and to prepare for the second coming of Jesus Christ. They also incorporated Christianity, UFO religions, and inspiration from Freemason rituals. They targeted high-powered, affluent people to join as members of the secretive society. Within the cult, members were continuously ranked and placed into numerous categories accordingly. When members advanced to the next level, elaborate ceremonies were held where members wore crusader robes and pricey jewelry and paid heavy initiation fees. De Mambro would bring out a sword he claimed was given to him 1,000 years before in another life. There were temple lodges located in a number of countries across the globe. What puts the Order of Solar Temple on this list was the bloodshed that began to be spilt in October of 1994 in Quebec. The 3-month-old son of member Tony Dutoit was deemed to be the Antichrist by DiMambro, who felt the baby intended to stop him from reaching spiritual success. As a result, the infant was ordered to be brutally murdered in a ritual that required him to be stabbed with a wooden stake. The atrocity only just began. Soon after, believing they were to be reborn on another planet in another universe, DiMambro and 12 members conducted a Last Supper to prepare them for the mass murder-suicide that would take place in a few days. In 3 locations, 2 in Switzerland and 1 in Quebec, about 50 cult members died as a result of poisoning, smothering, being shot, or by other means. To make the scene even more disturbing, at the Switzerland locations, many of the members were found in an underground temple where the walls were lined with mirrors. They were dressed in ceremonial robes, their bodies placed in a circle, feet together, with many having plastic bags tied around their heads. Each person was found with a bullet wound in their head. After investigations were conducted, it is believed that many members were drugged before their deaths. Other bodies, some of children, were found in ski chalets. The mass murder and suicide were discovered after explosions and subsequent fires on the properties drew police to the grisly scenes. Just a year later, the cult participated in another mass murder-suicide in December of 1995 in France. 2 members shot 14 others and then killed themselves by shooting and setting themselves on fire. The 16 bodies were discovered 2 days later in the mountains, and their bodies were arranged in a star formation. Once again, in March of 1997, 5 members in Quebec participated in a suicide pact. Their charred remains were pulled from a house after a fire broke out. Thankfully, 3 teenagers, the children of one of the couples that died, were discovered alive in the tool shed in the backyard of the house. All 3 had been drugged before the ritual suicide took place. Even without the founders, the cult continued on, with several suspected mass murder-suicides having been thwarted by police efforts throughout the years. With all the secrecy, ordered hits, and the deaths of the founders, it's hard to say just how many deaths can actually be attributed to the cult, though it's estimated to be over 100. Number 1. The Manson Family. Founded by Charles Manson in California in the 1960s, once again, to understand how this cult had become what it did, we have to take a look at Charles Manson's personal life. Manson's childhood was turbulent at best. Born to a 16-year-old mother and having no contact with his biological father, he lived with his aunt and uncle as a young child while his mother was sent to prison for robbing a diner. After she was released, the two moved in and out of several cheap motel rooms. A few years later, she tried to have him placed in a foster home, but as one wasn't available, he was sent to a school for boys. A few months later, he ran away from the school back to his mother, where she refused to take him back. This wouldn't be the last time Manson faced rejection. He spent the rest of his adolescence and most of his adulthood getting into trouble. For various offenses, such as burglary, car theft, and parole violations, he was sent to institutions and prison on several occasions. He even missed the birth of his first son while in prison, stemming from a charge of driving himself and his wife to LA from Ohio in a stolen car in 1955. His wife also left him while imprisoned, which resulted in his attempt to break out just 2 weeks prior to a parole hearing. He retained this destructive behavior with a cycle of going in and out of prison until he was released in March of 1967. By this point, at 32 years old, Manson had been in prison and other institutions for over half of his life. He soon moved to San Francisco, where he met Mary Brunner, a 23-year-old library assistant from Berkeley. He moved into her residence, and before long, 18 other women moved in as well. As the hippie movement was emerging at the same time, he established himself as a guru to gain his following. Combining the teachings of the Process Church and Scientology that he had heard about while imprisoned, the basis of his teachings were that Jesus Christ and Satan would reunite to judge humanity, and that his followers were the reincarnations of the original Christians. He even told stories to his group that he was Jesus Christ himself. It didn't take long for his group to become dedicated to Manson, and after setting out on a road trip down the West Coast, the group grew with each stop. After picking up 2 women part of the now established Manson family, Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys took them back to his house. This is the event that links the Manson family to the infamous Sharon Tate murders. After a series of complicated and odd events, Wilson allowed for Manson and his followers to stay at his house on Sunset Boulevard. The 2 recorded music together, and Wilson introduced Manson to several people in the entertainment business, 2 of which were Terry Melcher and Rudy Altabelli. The Manson family eventually left Wilson's house and in 1968 moved to a ranch. There are several theories as to what turned the cult to murder, one of which involved Manson going on a rant about rising racial tensions, and that, after hearing and becoming obsessed with the Beatles' White Album, believed the Manson family was destined to make an album that would change the world by triggering the predicted chaos which he referred to as Helter Skelter. As the cult completed tasks like mapping their escape to the desert for when society began to fall, and writing the song lyrics to the world-ending album, they also prepared for Terry Melcher to come to the house to hear their work. But the first time, he didn't show. In March of 1969, going to the house Melcher lived some months before, he discovered the new inhabitants were actress Sharon Tate and director Roman Polanski. Though the murders at Sharon Tate's estate was what this cult became known for, it wasn't their only act of violence. After shorting a drug dealer by the name of Bernard Crowe, he threatened to kill the entire Manson family. Manson then shot Crowe in his Hollywood apartment on July 1st, 1969 in retaliation. Soon after, believing he had murdered him after seeing on the news that the body of a Black Panther member had been found, he put their property on lockdown, including nighttime patrols where members were armed with guns. They believed Helter Skelter was beginning. On July 25, 1969, Manson ordered 3 cult members to an acquaintance's home, named Gary Hinman, to rob him for money Manson suspected he had inherited. After 2 days of holding him hostage and not receiving money, Manson went to the house to intimidate Hinman with a sword. Soon after, Manson ordered member Bobby Busalil to stab Hinman to death, which he cooperated. Before leaving the house, members wrote "Political Piggy" and a Black Panther symbol on the wall in Hinman's own blood. A few days later, Busalil was arrested after being found driving Hinman's car. A few nights later, Manson declared to the cult that Helter Skelter was beginning. On the night of August 9, 1969, Manson ordered cult members Susan Atkins, Linda Caspian, and Patricia Krenwinkel to murder everyone at Sharon Tate's home. Doing as they were told, they proceeded to viciously murder 5 people at the residence that night, including Sharon Tate. Atkins then wrote the word pig on the front door in the blood of their victims. Not done with their murderous intentions, Manson and other cult members went to the household of supermarket executive Leno LeBianca and his wife Rosemary. Suspected of entering the home through an unlocked door, Manson ordered that the couple have their heads covered by pillowcases and that they be bound by lamp cords. Before leaving, he ordered some of the cult members to murder the couple. The murders were horrific, and before leaving, the group wrote several messages throughout the house in the victim's blood, one of which read, "Helter Skelter." Police investigations for the murders ensued, and evidence led them to the Manson family. After being charged for the murders and standing trial, 4 of the Manson family members, including Charles Manson, were found guilty for their roles in the brutal slayings. 2 other murder instances were linked to the Manson family after their arrests. Manson was found guilty of murdering Donald Shea, a worker on the ranch the Manson family resided at. Other Manson family members were convicted of murdering Vietnam Marine veteran James Willett and his wife Lauren Willett. James was killed months earlier and buried in a shallow grave. Lauren's body was discovered buried in the basement of their home, having been more recently murdered. Their infant daughter was found alive in their house, which the Manson family were residing in. During their trials, it was discovered the Manson family members were living with the Willets as they committed various robberies and other crimes, proposing a possible motive that the Willets wanted the Manson members gone. The Manson family members pled guilty for their roles in the murders. The Manson family is one of the most notorious and talked about cults of all time, but only a small aspect of their terror is commonly linked to them. Their crimes are repulsive and show us how evil humans can be. How were these 4 people able to cause so much pain and terror? And how can we stop the next dangerous cult from following in their blood-soaked footsteps? Knowing the answers to these questions can potentially save many lives.